Alrighty, it is 11:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I am going to ask if everyone can go ahead and mute themselves if you are not a speaker in the presentation, just so we don't have any background noise going on. Also, if you guys have a question throughout the presentation, I know there's a lot of people on this call, so if you could drop your question into the chat, Danny is going to be reviewing those. She'll respond to any that she's able to respond to through the chat. And then she can also ask us questions out loud if it's something she's not able to address. So again, just make sure you're muted and then make sure to drop all of your questions into the chat. All right, so as we start, obviously you guys are pretty aware of our mission at this point, but just wanted to remind you of our vision that homelessness be rare, brief, and non-recurring in our community, and also our core value that housing is a human right. So we wanna make sure that the narrative we're telling is in line with this core value and belief. We think that everyone has the right to housing. So that's gonna be evident in the work that we do and the work that our partners do. The agenda for today, we're going to go through staff updates. We'll have some updates from Chester County, updates from Lancaster County. We then will unveil the 2024 PIC count data for York County and Lancaster County, and then we'll have agency updates at the end. So starting with operations updates, so I just kind of want to give you guys a heads up of the meetings to come. So in April, we're actually going to have our HUD representative, Angie Hall, come and do a Continuum of Care 101 training. So she's going to talk a little bit about what a Continuum of Care is, how it's funded, but also talk about how a Continuum of Care can fund your agencies. So there is funding available for homeless service providers. So you'll get a little bit more information on how to apply for that funding and what that funding can be used for. Then in May, we'll do breakout groups, again, focused on our housing continuum of care. And then we'll have a staff presentation and a large group discussion at our June meeting. So our staff recently attended the National Alliance to End Homelessness Spring Conference, which was 2024 Innovations and Solutions for Ending Unsheltered Homelessness. In the coming weeks, we're going to work to compile the information and what we learned and the resources we received and send it out to you guys. But we just got back really late Thursday night and then had a pretty quick turnaround this weekend. So we haven't been able to compile that information for you guys yet, but we should have it to you by the end of this month. And then a reminder, I know we talked about this a little bit at our last monthly meeting, but we are working on building an advocacy toolkit on our website. This is where you guys can go to learn more about homelessness, how to address homelessness, and how to advocate for long-term sustainable solutions to homelessness in our community. Grants updates, we were recently awarded a grant from Springs Close, the York branch. This grant is going to be used to cover the cost of our data collection software that we use for the PIC count and other data collection projects that we do, and it will also help pay for some of our outreach materials. And then Danny is going to share the financial updates.
Hey guys, so we have some exciting news. I know that a lot of you are SCORF recipients, so we should have completed those check-ins, and by we, I mean Melissa. And she's working to compile some outcome reporting for City Council and City Management in Rock Hill. And once that is through, we should actually be putting out stuff in September, so kind of stay tuned for that. If you are have completed your biannual check-in and want to apply, if you're a current recipient and you want to apply for additional funds, you guys should have already talked about that and kind of know the process for doing that. If you have any questions, obviously reach out to Melissa. And then we have CDBG CV money that we are putting out a new grant application for. So this is a shameless plug. If you have not followed Cash on social media, do it now, because that is going to be the very first place that you will see new grant opportunities that you can apply for. Is going to be on that social media. So you're going to want to follow, like and share Cash's stuff. There's a lot of great updates, a lot of good information, but that's going to be where we start putting out our grant opportunities to the community. That way we kind of centralize it and publicize it so that everybody can stay in the loop and we can be more transparent and open about those opportunities. So that application will come before the end of the month. So kind of mark it on your calendars to be watching that before the end of March to see what that grant application will look like.
All right, so time for the outreach updates. And so, we rolled out the new referral that's online. This month, we only had 3 referrals come through. But just so you're aware of the different types of referrals, there's a community referral. So these are community folks who kind of give their online referral system. And then we have agency referrals. So other agencies or someone who works for other agencies may have made a referral. That could be like through an email. Self-referrals are these referrals like if somebody goes to our Facebook or our website and kind of asks for assistance directly for themselves, that's self-referral. And then outreach team engagement. This just might be me driving around, going to visit somebody else or hearing of another encampment. So that's our outreach engagement. So like I said, for the month of February, we only had 3 referrals. One of the referrals was a self-referral who reached out through the website, and then 2 actually came through the community. But contact was made with 3 individuals through the referral process. And then right now I have 14 open cases. And then 4 which are closed, which means 2 were housed. They housed themselves, and then 2 were referred to Family Promises, who are housing them as of right now. And then that's 14 open cases of those who were unsheltered living in encampments. The resource distribution update, we made contact with 58 individuals the last time we were at the bus hub, and we gave away approximately 348 items. So moving forward, the street outreach engagement schedule, I try to go out Mondays and Wednesdays from 12:30 to 2:30. If that's something that you're interested in joining me with, just give me an email. We can sit down and chat and kind of go through the process. Also, as needed, we're going to still be going out with Lieutenant Fry monthly, as well as the resource distribution. We have that schedule up. So if you would like to see that schedule, that's the 3rd Thursday of the month between 10 and 12. And we're going to be staying at the bus hub because we figure that's just the best case to kind of catch everybody. And then moving forward, I will still be doing intake at Bethel, and then visiting the Dorothy Day and Bethel Soup Kitchen. And then monthly moving forward, I'm hoping to get a resource distribution team in both Chester and Lancaster, street outreach in both Chester and Lancaster, and then also continue in Fort Militica K area with Lieutenant Wooten. And then this is the community referrals survey. Again, this is on our website, and you can scan that. Keep it in your phone. If you see something, make sure that you go to our website and kind of put that information in. It just helps us out to know where, when, how, and then kind of close the loop, making sure that we're getting information and resources to those who need it. And then I'm not sure, is anybody on from Chester?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right, this is Lee Tanya Williams with Battered But Not Broken, Chester, Lancaster, and Fairfield County.
Yes. So would you like to speak? I don't know if you can see this, the screen, but we kind of made it known that Battered But Not Broken Ministries conducted a handful of surveys with individuals experiencing homeless for the pit count. So we really do appreciate that. And then, of course, Lieutenant, you know that we are going to be moving forward in hopes to have a monthly meeting, so that we can go ahead and jump on this process now.
We're having a bit of trouble hearing you. It's kind of going in and out.
Is that better? A little bit?
I think so. It was fine, and then just that last time you were talking, it just decided it was gonna what, so.
technical difficulties. So just to kind of, this are the updates for Chester. Latanya, you want to add anything to this?
The answer certified as an information system. Say you do not have an important.
We hear a lot of background noise. If y'all don't mind muting yourselves, and Chastity, you're still going in and out, so I can just briefly share. Battered but Not Broken Ministries did conduct some surveys for the point in time count. However, not enough surveys were completed to generate statistically significant data for analysis. So you won't see any of their data shown in today's PIC count updates. But we are working with Battered but Not Broken and a lot of other agencies out in the Chester community to be able to schedule a monthly meeting to go ahead and start planning for next year's point in time count. And then Emily Price, are you on today to share Lancaster updates?
Hi there. Yep, I'm on. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, let me just adjust my screen here. So essentially with the Lancaster updates, we were able to, I think, successfully complete a really good PIC count this year. And the information that we received, I think, was more in detail this year than we have in the past. And it was definitely a little bit more valuable in terms of the actual numbers and how we can utilize that going forward in Lancaster County to essentially leverage that information to hopefully get more funding for this shelter that we're working on, as well as the warming center that is not nearly as far away as it was when we first started. So.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate that. And now we're going to get into PIC count data presentation. Again, we're going to be presenting data for York and Lancaster counties. We're going to start with the York data, and then Emily is going to share the data that was collected and analyzed for Lancaster County. So just a quick disclaimer, this count includes individuals who were sheltered and unsheltered during the PIC count and is based on the number of individuals who indicated that they lacked permanent and stable housing. I will say our count is going to be a little bit different than the count that you might see published by HUD or by our Continuum of Care mock. The reason for that is we have a broader definition of homelessness. This follows the McKinney-Vento definition that includes all individuals who lack permanent and stable housing. So this includes individuals who might be couch surfing, staying with a friend or a family member, and individuals who paid for a hotel or a motel room. We know that those individuals still lack permanent stable housing, so we include them in our count, but they will not be included in the official count that HUD uses. As far as accuracy goes, the data presented in this report is based on the individuals our staff, volunteers, and homeless service providers were able to make contact with over the course of just a few short days. So historically, we know that the PIC count underrepresents the homeless population, and I am absolutely certain that that is the case again this year. So again, the number that you see, it's still going to be a pretty big number. However, this is just a percentage of the total number of individuals living in our community who lack permanent, stable housing. And then just to clarify, the data points and percentages you guys are going to see reflect the number of individuals who responded to the question. Not every individual responded to every single question. So the percentages are just based on the responses we did receive and not on that total count. And just a quick acknowledgement that each number and statistic we talk about represents a human life. You know, these are our fellow community members whose lives are made worse and whose lives are threatened by a lack of affordable, accessible, safe housing. So for every person that we did count and we did come into contact with, there are likely many, many more who are enduring challenges related to homelessness and housing instability in our community. So I just want us to remember that. I think a lot of times we do get wrapped up in the data, and it's very easy to forget that we're talking about human beings here. We're talking about our fellow community members. So for York County Pitt Count data, we use 3 different tools to collect this data. We use the standard Pitt Count survey that is mandated by HUD. We also added a few additional questions to the survey just to gain additional information that we wanted to know about the unhoused population. And then we also had a shortened Pitt Count survey for shelters and transitional housing providers that utilize the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. This is because a lot of the Pitt Count questions are included in those shelters and transitional programs intake assessments. So there was no need to duplicate the assessments that are already taking place at those facilities. So instead, we just had a shortened survey with a few additional questions. And then we also asked our HMIS service providers if they would send us a report from the night of the Pitt Count that just told us how many individuals they served, and that had some basic demographic information on the individuals who were served by those providers. So our official count for 2024 is 323 individuals. You can see last year we counted 238 individuals. So this was a nearly 36% increase in the number of individuals that we counted, which is a pretty big jump, you guys. Like, that's very significant. We were pretty shocked by that. And I will say that that is not easily explained by us just being better at conducting a Pitt Count. I do think that we've improved our process a little bit. I think this year's Pitt Count was better than last year's Pitt Count. However, typically where you're going to see those improvements kind of take place is going to be more on the unsheltered counts, but we actually see the increase in our sheltered count. So for that reason, I don't think this can easily be explained by improvements to our Pitt Count data collection process. I think it is a true reflection that our numbers of homeless individuals is increasing. And then again, I just want to remind you guys, these are just the individuals we were able to make contact with. We also reached out to McKinney-Vento schools. Their numbers aren't included in the Pitt Count, but we do know that over 400 students in York County have been identified as lacking permanent stable housing. So in addition to our over 300 individuals, we also have over 400 students that we know are lacking permanent and stable housing in York County. So this is just some basic demographic information. So we have age and gender breakdowns. And then we have race and ethnicity breakdowns. And I do want to kind of pause and take a minute on this slide, because you can see that over 51% of individuals said that they were Black, African American, or African. And then only 40.3% of individuals said that they were white. And then you can also see 2.1% of individuals said that they were American Indian, Alaska Native, or Indigenous. And then you can also see the multiracial, not Hispanic or Latino percentage there at the bottom. And the reason why this is significant is it really supports national data that Black, Indigenous, and multiracial people are much more likely to experience homelessness than white individuals due to historical and structural racism. We know that there is a lot of systemic racism on a national level, but also within our community. And we can see this when we're talking about the individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So there is a true, discrepancy in these numbers and a racial disparity that we were able to see in this year's Pitt Count. Of the individuals that we counted, 10% were experiencing unsheltered homelessness. So this means that they were either, on the streets, they were staying in the woods or an encampment, in an abandoned building. We had one person, I believe, that said that they were staying at a bus station on the night of the Pitt Count. So just really anyone who is staying in a place, sleeping in a place that is not meant for human habitation is included in this count. So that was 10%. So we know about 90% of the people we counted were sheltered on the night of the Pitt Count. Of the sheltered population, over 74% of those individuals were staying at an emergency shelter. So the question is, are there enough opportunities for these individuals to transition out of the emergency shelter? And I think our service providers would tell you no. I really think it's probably more likely that a lot of these individuals will become unsheltered again before they either move to a transitional housing facility or permanent stable housing. So again, just seeing that bottleneck of we have a lot of individuals staying at the emergency shelter with no real opportunities to progress forward or progress out of that situation. And then over 14% of sheltered individuals stayed with a friend or a family member on the night of the pit count. So the question for these individuals is, are these individuals typically accounted for when we're measuring homelessness and the impact of homelessness on our community? And are these individuals more or less likely to access homeless services or other services that might be available to them? For our unsheltered individuals, nearly 40% indicated that they slept in the woods or in an encampment on the night of the pit count. And the question here is there room for these individuals in the emergency shelters? I know right now we are in warming season, so Bethel Men's Shelter isn't turning anyone away, but just in another month or two, you know, they will be. So it's very likely, really it's absolutely likely that the individuals that are staying at the shelter now, the majority of those individuals will become unsheltered again here in the next month or two. It's also important to note that a lot of individuals who are sheltered are also going to be unsheltered at some point within that same month. So the University of Southern California is conducting a study now, and they found that 37% of individuals who reported being sheltered one night were also unsheltered at some point during that same month. So when we're talking about unsheltered versus sheltered homelessness, it's really important to note that a lot of people experience both forms of homelessness. And then I also want to provide just a little bit of context that our sheltered count is probably much higher because we really encouraged individuals to go to the shelters on the night of the pit count so that they were counted. It's much harder to locate unsheltered individuals, especially with all of the encampments that have been shut down lately. So we really did encourage people to stay at a shelter on the night of the pit count. We let them know that we would have gift cards and other incentive items there for them. So I think that's also the reason why our shelter count is so much higher this year than it was last year. Why this data matters: unsheltered individuals may face additional barriers to housing than individuals who are sheltered. Exposed to the elements, might be disconnected from a lot of services that are available to them. And then they may also have poor health outcomes. We don't really know for sure at this point. There hasn't really been a study yet that has compared health outcomes of sheltered individuals versus unsheltered individuals. But the University of Southern California is working to collect and compile that data now. So hopefully we'll have some information for you guys in the next few months from that study. Okay, so labor force participation. This was a really interesting statistic, probably one of the more significant data points that we collected during the pit count. So you can see that 67% of individuals reported that they were participating in the labor force. Labor force participation is comprised of individuals who are either employed or who are actively seeking employment. And where this really kind of comes into light is, oops, sorry, skipped one too many. You can see that in December of 2023, the labor force participation rate for South Carolina as a whole was less than 57%. So there is a common misconception that I'm sure you guys are aware of, that individuals experiencing homelessness are lazy or unwilling to work. So this data actually shows that the population we serve is much more engaged with the labor force, is much more willing to work than the general population in South Carolina. So again, this data really just helps dispel that misconception. Employment status. So here you can see the breakdown of individuals. We had 30% say that they were employed. Of these individuals, over half of them were employed full-time. 37% of individuals were not employed looking for work. 12% were not looking for work. And then we had 20% of individuals who were either disabled or retired. So this data kind of shows us that even when individuals are employed, they still can't access housing, they still can't afford housing in our community. It also shows that there's a lot of barriers to employment for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. This could be a lack of transportation to get to and from work. It could be conflicts with the shelter schedule. You know, does your shift end after the shelter is already closed, and therefore you can't access the shelter if you're employed? And also, we see a lot during the PIT count, just the stigma that's associated with homelessness. We always hear stories every single year of individuals who go up in for a job interview, but because they have all of their stuff with them, it's pretty easy to spot that they're probably experiencing homelessness. They're automatically turned away and not even allowed to interview for the job. So again, we have a lot of individuals who are working and a lot of individuals who are trying to work within this community that just still face barriers to employment and barriers to housing. And then we also have 20% of respondents who were retired or disabled. So this suggests that they're probably on a fixed income. And if your fixed income doesn't go up, but housing costs continue to, then obviously you're going to find yourself experiencing homelessness or housing instability. So that's also really important to note. So last permanent address. So we asked individuals what their last permanent zip code was before they were experiencing homelessness this time. And you can see over 65% of individuals' last permanent address was in York County. Again, just kind of combating that misconception that individuals experiencing homelessness are not from our community. They are. You know, 65% is pretty significant. And then you can also see 73% had a last permanent address in Chester, Lancaster, or York County, so within the service area that our agency works to serve. And then we have 83% of individuals whose last permanent address was in South Carolina. Only 15%, actually less than 15% of individuals reported that their last permanent address was outside of South Carolina. And I'll tell you that over half of these individuals had a North Carolina zip code. So again, we're not very far from North Carolina. So it's not like people are migrating from all over the place to get to our area to experience homelessness. That's just not the nature of homelessness. A lot of these individuals were born and raised here or were here for several years before experiencing homelessness. So again, these are just our community members who cannot afford housing in our community. So looking at homeless history for York County, we see number of experiences. So the majority of people, this was their first time experiencing homelessness. You can see 63%, and then 37% have experienced homelessness 2 or more times. And then for duration of homelessness, you can see the majority of people have been experiencing homelessness for a year or more. So that means that once people experience homelessness, it becomes very difficult for them to get out of that experience. Homelessness becomes a long-term problem, and the longer someone experiences homelessness, the harder it is and the more issues they will face. You know, trauma histories build, you know, instances of domestic violence or other types of violence may occur, mental health issues get worse, substance use histories. A lot of those actually start after someone experiences homelessness because it's being used as a coping mechanism. So the longer someone experiences homelessness, the worse off they're going to be, the harder it is for them to access employment and housing opportunities. So unfortunately, this is a really sad statistic, but it's really important for us to know that people are not progressing through our housing continuum of care. People are really getting stuck in their experiences of homelessness. And services needed, 71% of individuals reported that they were in need of long-term housing. And you can see that we had more individuals report that they needed long-term housing than any of the other services that we had listed. This included food, transportation, clothing, and emergency shelter. So again, housing is a big need in our community. And unfortunately, there's not enough of it that is accessible and affordable to the clients that we serve. And then this is just a little handout that we're going to make sure to provide to you guys after this call. Hopefully sometime later today, if not later today, sometime later this week, you guys will get these meeting minutes. You'll get a copy of the recorded call so you can reference it. And then you'll also get this handout that you can use and share with your friends, your family members, your colleagues, whoever you need to, just to advocate, address a lot of these misconceptions. And just educate the community on what homelessness looks like in your county. And now I'm going to pass it on to Emily for Lancaster County data.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to kind of follow along. I have a second screen here, so if I'm not looking at you guys. But essentially, again, the Pitt Count information that we were able to obtain, I think will be very useful as we go along to get services for and services and things needed for our homeless community in Lancaster County. So if you'll look at the next slide there, the individuals counted, we looked at essentially a 64% increase from 2021, where we identified about 47 people. And now this year we've identified 77 individuals between Lancaster and Kershaw. So that obviously is a major increase. And even looking back from 2019 to now, it was essentially 120% increase on the number of homeless individuals that we were able to identify. And with the demographics, we have a larger amount of individuals that are in that really 35 to 54 range that we've found, well, really 25 to 54 range. And the thought behind that is just to remind you guys that there are those working poor individuals who are out there, and these are the adults who are responsible for the children and often taking care of the elderly individuals. And so if they're not able to provide for themselves, then essentially they're not going to be able to provide for their children as well as the elderly population that typically we would expect them to be responsible for at a certain point in life. So that just causes disparaging data saying that these individuals, as they get older, if they don't have anyone prepared to take care of them. So it's really something we need to step in front of. And as far as gender is concerned, again, really close to a 50-50 split in Lancaster County that we saw for males and females that were unsheltered. And here with our demographic information for race and ethnicity, we're going to see 47, nearly 50% that were white, and the same actually for Black, African American, or African. We did have about 3% identified as something other than those two. We had Hispanic, 1.3% Hispanic, 1.3% with the American Indian, Alaska Native, or Indigenous. We also had some mixtures that were identified during the Pitt count as well, and it was again about 1.3%. So one of the things you want to think about when you're looking at the actual ethnicity or the racial divide of the individuals, again, 47.4% of the individuals reported were Black and African American. And if you think about it from the perspective of the Census Bureau, that is a shame because only 21% of the individuals identified are Black. So that is a major portion of that community here in Lancaster County that is experiencing some type of homelessness. And again, to piggyback off of what Melissa said, this does matter because of the marginalized communities that aren't receiving service for whatever reason, whether it be lack of education, racism, just not getting that opportunity. Definitely causes a really large gap in those who are essentially placed in the have-nots category. 74% of the individuals that surveyed were experiencing unsheltered homelessness, which was a huge gap from what you guys saw for York County. I think it was like 10%. Unsheltered for us, there's definitely a lot of barriers to consider, but one of them is that we don't have a shelter, right? So where you were able to encourage during your outreach individuals to go and stay at a shelter and utilize those services available, our only option is to essentially send folks to York County. So again, we're working on that with our shelter, and these numbers really solidify how that is needed for Lancaster County. So when we look at the sleep location, again, 74% of individuals were unsheltered, and just the condition of where those individuals had to stay is a really big disparity from what you see. They don't have a shelter to go to. They're in their vehicle. Those who have vehicles, about 32%. Then you have those that are on the street or sidewalk. And what number stuck out to us really was the numbers that are in woods or encampments, as well as those with no water, no electricity, or living in places beyond repair. And during our actual pit count, we did find people who were staying in abandoned trailers, and those typically are not in the city limits, so they're not as easily identified as an abandoned house might be in the city, right? Because the police are at least generally going to be going through those areas and maybe having the opportunity to see. But if they're in a trailer out in the country, we're not necessarily looking for those individuals. And so, we have seen actually one of the individuals that we did find in the trailer, who the trailer actually had a tree going through the top of it. But he was staying there. We were able to get housing from him through Austin Wilkes Society, and just really making a network of support around him until we were able to find something that would work out. And he was one of the individuals that was employed. It was just a matter of being able to get things in order and having that network to support him in creating that path. When we look at the numbers that are experiencing homelessness, right? Is this your first time experiencing homelessness? It reflected a lot of what we saw in York County. We had 57% that identified that this is their first time experiencing homelessness. And with that duration, we had about 29% that said, they have been homeless a year or more. 30% that said 90 days. But I am willing to bet that I will say the use of the surveys that we had and being able to drill down a little bit more, I think is going to be helpful as we go forward. But just having that opportunity to see that, 90 days or more is a long time to not have a place to stay. It is a long time to be outside. It is a long time that will allow you the opportunity to lose hope, that affects your mental capacity. So those are just some things that I think we need to be considering as Lancaster County as we go forward. Like, the longer someone is homeless, then the bigger of an opportunity for them to remain homeless, like we see in that 57%, or excuse me, that 43%. So here we see that of the individuals, of the 77 people that we did survey, 59% of them reported having some type of disabling condition. And of that 59%, 86% of them said that this is something that would impact their ability to live independently. So really just being able to determine, are those things, those disabling conditions, are they about mental health? Are they about physical health? If it's something as simple as getting appointments, having physical therapy, are these things that, again, we can surround them and kind of make a path for them to get the treatment and the care that they need. So being able to see, a lot of times people think, well, they're alcoholics or drug users, but really physical disability was something that prohibited folks from being able to have housing. And that's a really easy circle to see, right? If you can't physically work, then what do you do, right? If you're not old enough to get Social Security, if you stand in the middle, then what do you do and what resources can be provided? So just to know that we had these individuals who were willing to share this information, because I would definitely dare say that there were probably a lot who didn't share, and some who, would say, this is an issue, but it's not necessarily stopping me from getting employment. But us as agency workers and just being in organizations know that that probably would be something that has stopped that person or that has limited that person's ability to access employment that's stable. So that's just something else to think about as we go along. It was a large amount that felt like, this is why I can't. And who is helping them address that issue. And much like Melissa, I will be providing this information to our Latch community to let them know, and we'll be presenting this to them as well as to the United Way board and any other members that want to know more about it, so that they can just see that, these numbers, we're fortunate in the sense that when we look at individuals, we only identified 77, but we know for every one we see, there's probably 3 or more that we don't see. And so being aware of this at this point in Lancaster County, I actually think is an advantage, so that we're able to get in front of these numbers barreling without any direction and any structure to how we can address some of these things. Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Emily. Appreciate you. So there is some data that was not included in this presentation. We, being away at multiple conferences this past month, did not have time to compile all the information, and we also didn't have time to share all of the information during today's presentation. But if there is any information that was not included in this presentation that your agency could use for grant applications, or that you on an individual level can use for advocacy purposes, or just to be educated on it, please feel free to email me. My email is listed there. You guys also get emails from me regularly, so you should have it. But feel free to reach out if there's any specific data points that you would like to have more information on. For example, we did not report on disabling conditions in York County. We can do that. We can give you the percentage of people that said that they had been a victim or survivor of domestic violence. We can also give numbers on the number of individuals who were veterans. So there is some information that we have that was not included in this presentation. So again, please do not hesitate to reach out if there's any data points that you would like to have.
Emily, really quickly, we're getting some questions specifically about Lancaster data. Do you mind sharing your email as well if people have questions about Lancaster data?
Sure thing. I already put it in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dave, to answer your question, last year, I know at the end of last year, we identified about 50 individuals who were experiencing homelessness, and that is something that we kind of from the school system. So that is something that we kind of identified, that in our numbers, we only had about, it was less than 15, about 11, I think, children who were identified, or those under 18 who were identified as homeless. And we know that that is not, that does not equal what we actually have in the school system. So I'm working with Lancaster County School System right now, specifically with Gabriel, to get the numbers from the McKinney-Vento individuals who they've identified. At least having those numbers or give us a more accurate depiction of what we're working with. And then it will be up to outreach to try to find and see how we can support that particular population.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, Emily, I mean, children are historically underrepresented in the PIT count anyways. Children are typically experiencing hidden homelessness, so they're very hard to identify and locate during the PIT count. But again, there's a little bullet point in one of the earlier slides, but we know over 400 individuals were identified by the McKinney-Vento programs in York County. So that's over 400 students that we know are experiencing homelessness or lack permanent stable housing in the York County area. So pretty significant numbers of children who are experiencing homelessness and housing instability.
And just in looking at the actual numbers, while we were able to identify 77, I had about 22 individuals that, again, we couldn't count because we didn't have enough information, but that our community and different agencies and organizations were able to at least identify a name, but we didn't have any additional information to go on for those individuals. And I see the question about incarceration. We didn't have any specific data surrounding it, but we know a lot of those in the 22 were identified as folks that were incarcerated. And when they will be released, they won't have anywhere to go in Lancaster County. Lancaster or Kershaw, for that matter.
Hey, Chassie, is your mic working for agency updates?
I think so. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Good, good. All right, agency updates. We have a few, and then anybody who has any at the end. So the Mercy House is having a barbecuing for a good cause fundraiser. That's March 23rd from 10 to 2 at Grace Lutheran Church. You see the address there. Come out and get your pork or chicken barbecue, $15 a pound or $12 a plate, and that includes baked beans, coleslaw, and a roll. And you can pre-order by Tuesday, March 19th. And that's Walker's Barbecue. So there's limited plates and pounds, so make sure that you order in advance. Then the Havens Men's Shelter is having a bike and car show. This was rained out prior, so this is the follow-up to that. Nancy, do you want to say anything about this, or Will?
I would say just come on down and have some fun. We're going to have vendors and food trucks, a lot of really cool cars that's coming.
My son and daughter are so excited for it. And then on top of that, because cars and bikes aren't enough, let's do a cake auction. So that's May 17th at 11 and the 18th till 5. So the Rock Hill Galleria Mall is the location. You see the address there. And then, of course, you can reach out to Nancy if you have any questions or concerns. Anything else to add about that, Nancy?
If you want to come and bid on a cake or put a cake in, just hit me up.
Sounds yummy. All righty. So Emily, do you want to talk more about the United Way of Lancaster, VITA?
Essentially, we've had so many people to request this particular service that some of our dates have had to be adjusted and removed, but those individuals who are at a particular income rate are able to receive this service. And I found out, this is my first year working with VITA, that folks have been using this for quite some time now. So, and they don't have to be from Lancaster or Kershaw County specific to utilize this service. So if you know someone who needs it, definitely go into this flyer. You can go on the United Way of Lancaster website and schedule an appointment. So feel free to share that with folks as well. Don't have tons of information about the Rose Run, but it will be held during the Red Rose Festival in Lancaster. And again, it's an opportunity for us to build community. So if you guys have any teams of runners that want to come out and support us in this fashion, feel free. You'll have that information as well, but that won't be until May. But the Red Rose Festival is a really awesome event. So if you're close to, have family down here, and you haven't been to it, definitely come out and see that event as a whole. It's really fun. There's tons of things to do for kids and adults.
Does sound fun. Keystone has a new peer support specialist, Jerica Osborne, and she's available to work with potential patients and pregnant mothers at Pathways Community Center. So she has an office there Anybody from Keystone want to share more about this? I'm not sure if she's on. I did hear Brian earlier.
I'm on, but my camera's not working, so sorry.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, she is just she's just another resource that everybody can use at Pathways and Cash and potentially the homeless court. So she'll be there to engage in services for anybody else that might need our help.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian.
Mhm.
And then our next meeting is going to be Thursday, April 4th at 11:30. We are going to be back in person at the Pioneer Church, but we will also have a hybrid option for those who can't attend in person. The topic's going to be Continuum of Care 101 training. And then obviously the meeting and the slides from today will be sent out as well.
I will just give people a heads up about the hybrid option. Due to the size of our in-person meetings, the hybrid people should be able to hear everything and see the meeting slides. However, you will not be heard if you attend via the virtual option. We will have a chat available and someone manning the chat, so they'll be able to ask your questions for you and respond to your questions via the chat. But you will not be able to be heard or really communicate with people that are in person. So we do encourage as many people to attend in person as possible, but did want to open that hybrid option up to our folks out in Lancaster and Chester counties who have a further drive to get to the Rock Hill area. So we're really excited about this option, but also hope that you guys bear with us through any technical difficulties we may have. I'm sure there will be several. And are there any other agency updates that were not included in the slides that anyone wants to share before we break?
Well, I would like to share, I don't get it, but I go by the Herald on Sundays. And yesterday in the Herald, there was it shows that the Housing Authority has vacancies at East Side Homes for individuals 55 and up. And disabled. They're accepting applications on Thursday, March 21st and Friday, March 22nd. So if you have any individuals that you know that are in need of housing, perhaps they can apply for that subsidized housing through Housing Authority.
Thanks for sharing that, Ms. O. I did actually receive that article, so I'll make sure it's included in the meeting minutes. I just didn't have time to put it in this presentation, but that is important.
I thought about that. You probably didn't have time, but I know it's a lot going on. But
no, you're good.
I sent it out to several people. Okay.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. That's important. Vacancies at the Housing Authority are how we move people out of the shelters, out of transitional housing. So I'll definitely make sure to share that in the meeting minutes with everyone. Any other updates or questions that we weren't able to address or get to today? Alrighty, well, I will stay on for a little bit, just if anyone needs me. But other than that, we are all done. So we'll make sure to get these minutes and the recording out to you guys, as well as the handouts we discussed during the presentation. And again, if you guys have any questions or would like more data from the PIC count, feel free to reach out to us directly. But thank you guys, I appreciate y'all.
Thank you.